Hey guys, so I get a lot of questions from people that ask, I shot a nice buck. I'm not exactly sure that I want to mount it on the wall. Shoulder mounts, cost hundreds of dollars. What's another option rather than just skull capping the deer itself? And European mounts have gotten more and more popular over the years, and I really like them. They don't take up as much wall space. You can set them in a window well, you can set them on a tabletop, you can affix them to the wall. There's a lot of different things that you can do with them. And I wanted to show you today in a quick video that this isn't actually very hard to do. Probably one initial cost will get you 5 to 10 actual deer heads. And so my daughter recently shot her first buck. It's a small 4-point, but she wanted to do a European mount. And we've actually dipped a few, which has kind of been fun. You can go to Walmart and buy some cheap spray paint, spray it inside of a pan, a tub, plastic tub filled with water, and you can dip them and get like custom colors. So I'll show you a couple of those. But it's pretty simple to do. There's a couple of things that you need. Obviously you need some water, okay, hot water. You need probably a grill. My grill has a side oven or a side burner, and so that's where I fill my pot here. And here's what you need. I've gone through some people that I know who are in the hairdressing industry. Highlighter, lightener, powder. Actually, I've only really used this so far, 40% cream peroxide developer. And I'll show you how we make the skulls really white with just using this. I don't know, this wasn't very expensive, and I've used just a fraction and probably have done, I don't know, upwards of almost 10 deer heads now. You need a little teeny foam brush, some paper towels, because when you get done with this process, you'll actually lay the paper towels over the skull as it dries and paint the peroxide on with this. You don't want to get it on your fingers or your clothes. And in the actual pot as it cooks, the best thing to help break down what's left on the actual skull is OxiClean. So a few ingredients, not like a ton of stuff that you need, and of course a big pot. Now my daughter's deer is pretty small. It's not a huge rack that sticks out of the pot, so we won't need as much water, but we'll put this on there and I'll show you. We've already prepped a good bit of the actual deer head, and as you can see here, we've got most of all the hide off, which is good. It's pretty simple. You just basically cut around the actual antler and peel all this hide off, and you get as much meat off as you can as well. There's really no rocket science to this, guys. It's just cut as much of that stuff off as you can so you don't have to boil that. We're actually going to prep the pot, get that ready with the amount that we want. Sometimes if you have a large antler and it can't sit above the water, then you want to put a little bit of tape or foil around the base of the horns to protect these from getting stained by any of the cleaning agents that you put in the water. So OxiClean and maybe a little bit of Dove dish soap will go a long way, the degreasing type of soap. So I'll show you how we do this, and then your finished product looks like some of these over here. I'll just show you. I brought some out. So this was a cool one that we dipped, kind of in like an urban camouflage. Again, we had some green, beige, black, and white paint. So we dipped this one that I had shot several years back. Got lots of nice 8-pointers that I shot over the years. Again, you can see the racks are really clean. They look really good when they're done. Take your time and be careful not to get stuff on the antlers. And you can have some really nice horns. This was one I shot, I believe this one was just last year in West Virginia. Really nice bleached white skull. Got the teeth really clean. It's very clean. I've had it inside now for some time. And they just end up looking really awesome. This one was a fun one that we did for my son. We actually found this deer, but if you look close, it's like camouflage colors. Greens, grays, some dark olive colors, and it dipped in like a camouflage color, which looks really cool. You can imagine that sucker up on the wall. But anyway, we got several of them here. They're not hard to do. Again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 right there. Actually, there's going to be another one inside that I still have 7. Really easy to do, and I haven't bought any more supplies yet, so I could easily do that, probably double again with the same amount of supplies that I have. So, of course, taxidermists, they're qualified. They probably come out a little more clean, maybe a little more white. $150, 100 to 150 bucks, at least around here. Pretty fair. It does take some time. The sucky part is you got to watch this thing throughout the day, but it's a good warm day here in November. We're going to work on my daughter's deer today, let it boil outside while we're doing some different things, and we'll let you know how it goes. Alright guys, so the first thing is you got to kind of size up your pot. So here's the remaining skull that we have to get cleaned and boiled off. So I set it down in this pot. By the way, you're only using this 20-quart pot only for actually boiling beer heads, right? You don't ever use this for cooking. So there's all kinds of nasty material. I'm trying to adjust the camera a bit so hopefully you can see. We want to fill the water line up just to the base of the skull. And then as this thing starts to cook, we're going to just keep scrubbing off some of that water. So we put enough water in. I'm going to need some more to bring the water level up just to the base of the horn. So I'm going to go get some more water. I'll be right back. Okay, so we got our burner going, and a little bit more water. It will slowly burn down over time, but you don't want to get it up on the horn. So we're going to get it just to the top of the skull, which is about right there, maybe just a little bit more. We're going to adjust that back into that skull to get down there to get that little bit of meat off. And then we're going to let it sit here on high and boil for a while. Once we get the water good and hot, we'll add some OxyClean to it, as well as a little bit of dish detergent soap. Some guys like to power wash them actually beforehand, which does help get some of that meat and last bit of fur and stuff off, but this to me just works the best, and I don't have my power washer hooked up and all that stuff today, so we will check in as we go through the process. Okay, so now our water's gotten pretty hot. I keep a knife close by. You'll start to see this fleshy stuff get soft. You can start cutting it off as it cooks. Little red spots and any fur. Everything inside eventually is going to start scraping off. You can kind of see it's getting soft here, which is good. It's only been on about 10 minutes, so it's going to take a little while. It's going to take hours to go through this process, and it does smell, so make sure you do it outside. But I'm going to go ahead now and add a little bit of Dawn degreaser. And I'm going to add some of my OxyClean. Probably a good half a scoop. We'll see how that does. That will help. Sometimes I kind of get a long stick and stir that around a little bit. But you can see it kind of already getting all over the skull. Keep some extra water as it evaporates. And this is what you do for several hours. So as you come out each time, you kind of pull it out, and you can see it hasn't been nearly long enough, but this will start to cook, and you'll start to come in here with your knife and scrape this stuff off as an example. Get this meat off. The longer you wait, the easier it becomes, honestly, because you let the water and the detergents do their work. And you don't want to use a ladle, obviously, but you use something that you don't mind getting dirty, like a knife that you cut your deer with or whatever, and just kind of keep passing the water over once you come out. And I don't stand here for hours, guys. I go out and do other things and then come back. And as long as you have plenty of gas in your grill, you just keep this going. And we'll let you know as we get closer. Okay, so we got about 2 hours in. You can see we're a little low on water, so we're going to add a little more water to keep the water level up again to the base of the horns. It's good and hot, which is good. Got our knife here. Just be careful you don't burn yourself. The horns are kind of warm. You can see a lot of this meat is starting to cook out, which is good. You can just start to take the meat and you see it. Ooh, watch it, it's hot. Just peels right off because essentially it's cooked. And this is how you clean off all this meat and the remaining hide that might be left up around the horns. It's pretty tender, but it's still got a little ways to go, actually. The hardest part is kind of getting down in the eyes and the nasal passages, things like that. But the longer you let it cook, the more easily it just comes off. You can see this meat here is more exposed, so it's a little harder to get off. I try not to get my horns down too far into the actual water. Again, there's a little piece of hide here. And then when we get this to the very end, you'll have kind of a grotesque soup in the bottom of your pan that you'll have to discard once you kind of let it dry out. But this meat still got a little bit more. It's been about 2 hours again. You can see this meat is just essentially like it was in a crock pot or something. Obviously you wouldn't want to eat this meat, but just kind of pulls off and you just cut it out. Some of it's a little more spring loaded. Get down in these passages and pull this meat out. And maybe every half an hour to hour you come out just keep working at it. Again, getting as much as you can. So this is coming off the jawbone really good here. Now eventually this lower jawbone, it is loose, it will come off. Some guys save it. I have saved some of mine. It's okay to do that. I find unless you kind of get a way to reattach it, you generally end up setting it on a shelf and not really looking too much at that. You're more, focused on the rack itself. Again, get this meat pulled out. And you just keep doing this. Eventually, any brain material, whatever else is left in here, just cooks, and you eventually just, as you can see here, kind of cut down through it. And sometimes a pair of pliers is good to kind of pull at it. But honestly, the more you let it cook, the more you can see a bunch of this is about ready to come out. It just starts really peeling out pretty easy the more cooked that it gets. It's like slow cooking a roast almost, although a much more gross concept. I just took a whole, this is like a whole bunch of meat right here. You can just see, it just pulls out. Literally, it just pulls out like that. And now you can start to see the inside of like the clean skull and what it's going to look like, right? So just keep cleaning. Your knife. Some people like to use a coat hanger. I don't. I just use a knife. Sometimes I use a wire brush. Sometimes that helps a little bit. I hope you guys are getting that on film. I don't really know how it's going to actually pick this up on top of my head. But at any rate, this is what we just keep doing. Sometimes it helps if you add a little more OxyClean, a little more dish detergent. But this is doing pretty good. It takes a while, so don't be discouraged that in 2 hours it's not done. This one still has a ways to go, so we'll probably have this on here at least another couple of hours. And just we'll use some propane, some simple detergents and soaps, one-time investment in a big crock pot. I'm sorry, a big quart pot. And that's pretty much it. It stays hot and bubbly and boiling. Again, you want to get this little bit of hair off around the base of the horn. It's so warm out today, we got some bees flying around, interestingly. Just kind of scrape those little bit of hairs off. You can see they come off pretty easy. Now the skull won't look white, that's normal. You have to bleach it to get it white unless you want to dye it or dip it or paint it or whatever. And there's a bunch of different things people can do on those. Again, I like the homemade dipping, just using spray paint in a big plastic tub. It's kind of a fun way to do it and customize it. Megan is debating maybe doing some girlish colors on her first buck, but we'll wait and see what she does and how this turns out. We'll bleach it white first, of course, and then go from there. That's got to cook a little bit more. That's still a little bit attached. So set that back down there, and you can see water's a little bit low, so we're going to add a little bit more to cover that skull cap and get that water boiling up around the base of the horn where that little bit of hide is. It helps get it off just a little bit more to just ever so slightly cover it. There you go, just a little bit so you don't get too much of those bases stained. The other thing you can do is put a wire or something around this to keep it up a little bit more level, but that little bit I don't think it's going to hurt too much. The other thing is if you do stain them or bleach them a little bit too much, you can come back and put a little bit of shoe polish on the horn. That'll give it some other color, that back to looking normal. So normally I always just kind of check it from outside or inside. As you can see, I see good steam still coming off the pan, the pot. So I know my flame's still going. I got plenty of gas. I keep adding some water as needed. And it just sits out there and boils, and occasionally go out and cut some more of the loose meat off, free up the lower jawbone, and just keep doing this until most of it's really, really clean. And we'll continue with the process over the next few hours. Alright guys, it's now later on in the afternoon. I've been coming out over the past couple hours, and you can see most of the skull is getting pretty clean. So you can see these little hunks of meat here. Just want to scrape these off. The side of your knife blade works the best. Get those little hunks of meat off. There's stuff that's up in here. Okay guys, so it's the next morning. I've let this kind of sit out overnight and cure. You can see up inside, it's all cleaned out. There's no tissue left up inside the skull. Guys do that different ways. As it's boiling, I kind of shake it into the pot and get the contents out. I also use an old saw blade, which can get way up in there, as you can see. Gonna scrape that and detach any soft tissue and membrane. It also works pretty good in the nasal passages to get up in there without damaging too much stuff. Some guys like to use a hanger. I just find whatever I have laying around the garage. So we've cleaned all the base of the antlers off pretty good. There's no more flesh on here. It's down to the bones. The next part in the process is actually bleaching the skull itself. So I'm going to get rid of all this gross stuff here in the actual pot that's left over from the boil yesterday. Get a new clean surface. I'll get that cleaned out, and then I'll start laying the paper towels and basing it with, as I mentioned again, this 40% peroxide developer, and it's a creamy substance, so you paint it on. So anyway, I'll show you how to do that next, and then I'll let that sit for a couple days, and it'll be nice, bright and white. Okay guys, so we're back inside, and all you need now is one of these foam brushes. Again, you're from a hair supply store. Peroxide developer, it's cream, and some paper towels. So what I do is actually start by just taking some of this and dumping it on the skull. Okay, and it's kind of like a lotiony, creamy, kind of disgusting consistency. And then I take it and I just spread this all over the skull, being careful to not get it on the antlers, but up to the base of the antler, which gives it a nice, pretty white look. You can see part of the skull already is pretty white. Part of it is not. This is messy, so make sure you put you some paper towels down. And the foam brush allows you to kind of squish it up in there. And you want a pretty liberal coating of this, because this is what keeps it nice and bright white once it starts to bleach the skull. And I just go all around the whole skull. I'll add some more here because clearly we're going to need some more. Sometimes it's a little easier to add it to the brush if you can't get it actually on the skull once you get moving it around. Come up through here, and it's okay to let it run down in the eye orbital opening and around the teeth. Don't be afraid, because the whiter you get this, I think personally, the nicer it looks. And you'll start to see this over time starting to turn white, and it happens pretty quick. I'll make sure I get it all up inside the orbital, the eye opening. Okay, again, we're going to add some more to our brush. Got to get this other side. Again, being very careful to get up to the base of the antler, but not on the brown antler itself. Okay, that's a no-no. It will take the stain out. Now, again, worst case scenario, if you did do that, you can certainly come back and hit that with some shoe polish. That will help give you some natural color back. I have not done that, fortunately, thus far, but I know that that is one of the ways that you can try to resolve that problem. And again, as mentioned, don't forget to get down inside the orbital and the eye opening here. It just makes it look a lot sharper when you have it sitting out. Now, some guys do the underside. You can hit a little bit of the underside if you want, just to kind of make the skull look sharp. I like kind of a mix of natural white and, bright, brilliant white from this material that you're putting on it, as well as some of the natural colorations of the skull. But my daughter's unsure what she wants to do with this one. She might want to dip it. So if we're going to dip it, probably won't make too much of a difference. But you can see I'm getting a pretty thick coat. It's like dripping, which is why I want paper towels down. Don't do this over your hunting clothes. It will bleach them. It's the same property as a bleach. It will take the coloration right out of them. And then you can see it's kind of like we've painted it almost. Now, it doesn't look brilliant white yet, and that's okay. I got some. Now that's not that material down inside the white of that horn. That's actually some of the fat from cooking it. And that, again, with a little hot water at the very end of this process, we can get that out. That's not a big deal. But you don't want to get this material down on the base of the horns. Now the trick for me, I don't know if it's a secret or not, but this is what makes this work best for me, is you want to keep this stuff in contact with the bone over several days. So I come out and I repaint this maybe every other day or once a day, no more than once a day. But the way to keep this in contact with all these areas is to put paper towels over the deer skull. And then I go back with another coat. I'm going to show you right now. Okay, we're going to take a paper towel and we're going to tear it in strips. Okay, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to just lay this right down in here between the antlers. I'm going to tear out a little spot for the antler. There's nothing magical to this. Okay, lay this down in there, just like you see there. And I'm going to touch it to get it down inside the orbital opening and everything else. And the reason for that is because this is what makes it stay adhered to the actual skull. And you're going to come back and put a really liberal coating on now over top of this. And with this one, you can most definitely dump this on because this is going to spread really good. Okay, so we're going to come back again. And now essentially we're painting a coating on to hold the paper towel. And you want the paper towel to actually adhere to the skull. You can see in the back as we come around, it's starting to stick. And that's exactly the effect that you want to have. And in doing that, that's what keeps the peroxide in close, see inside the orbital bone here? Keeps it in close contact with the skull the whole time. And that's really, again, what you want to help keep this solution, this peroxide, in contact with the skull. And I have found that that's what makes the big difference in the skull. It's almost kind of like paper mache. We need a little bit more here on the snout, across the nose, and we should be about done. Oop, get away on you if you're not careful. Now it's much harder to pick up, so you got to kind of work with the material. But you can see it starts to get transparent and coming, shining through the paper towels. Okay. We're going to work down this side, pick up some of our scrap that's fallen off. Again, tucking it along the skull, inside the orbital opening as much as we can. Eventually the paper towel kind of tears a little bit, and that's good because then it starts to adhere that much better to the actual skull itself. And now you can kind of see it's taking the shape of the actual skull, and that's a good thing. That's the effect that you want here, to try to have that stick as much as you can get it to stick to the skull. And then I leave that in there. I come out, as mentioned, once every couple of days, maybe once a day at the most. And I'll just hit it with a little bit more to keep that good and wet. Get any scrap up off your paper towel and just reapply it right now, down around the sides, underneath the eye. You can put some more paper towel under there if you really want to, but I've got this pretty well covered. So I think I'm going to let this sit now for a few days, start its bleaching process, and in a few days it ought to look pretty good. That's what you do. Let her sit there for a little bit and just keep soaking. I'll show you the end effect once we get done. Alright everybody, this is the big reveal. Megan's first buck, first deer ever. We have been treating the skull with the bleach, as we showed earlier. This is the big reveal. I'm going to bring it in, Megan. Put it up in the light so people can see. So there it is, plastered with the paper towels painted white. And you came out once or twice since I've been gone, right? Mm-hmm. So we've probably doused it 3 at the most 4 times. So now we're going to peel it off. You can wrap it up in these paper towels. Hold over this way. The top of this deer skull was actually kind of tan to begin with, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was white already. There you go. So we'll give it maybe a quick rinse with some water. But see those marks on top? That's some of the hydrogen peroxide on there. Mm-hmm. And that's the skull. Now you want to dip yours, so we'll wrap the antlers if we're going to dip it, or you're going to leave it like that. But that's how it turns out in the end. Yep. Looks awesome. It had those weird spots on it to begin with. I've never had a skull look like that. It's kind of different. And if you're not happy with that color white, you could keep painting and add more paper towels in between the antlers. But on this one, I'm not sure it's going to matter if she decides to dip it. So that's how they turn out. Hold it up here sideways so you can see the side too. Yeah. Looks good. Cool. Very nice. Congratulations.